and welcome to this special broadcast, Prime Minister Modi's Diaspora Connect, our continuous coverage of Prime Minister Modi's historic visit to United States of America. We continue to track Prime Minister Modi's three-day visit, today being day 2. And now, clearly, Munmun, the focus shifts to the centerpiece event, that is the Diaspora event at New York. And there is palpable excitement building up already as we speak. I'm Sakal Bhatt on DD India with my colleague Munmun Bhattacharya.
Good evening to you, Sakal. Good evening to all of you around the world. 15,000 Indian Americans have gathered at Nassau Coliseum in Uniondale in New York to listen to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. All roads are in fact leading to there. In the run-up to PM Modi's address, cultural performances by Indian troops have already started at the venue. So celebrations by Indian Americans are on, and soon they will reach a crescendo in the presence of India's Prime Minister there, and we'll get you a blow-by-blow account of everything that's going to happen from here on.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look at the Diaspora Connect of Prime Minister Narendra Modi with the tens of thousands of Indians there in America. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the Indian diaspora at a mega event hosted at the Nassau Coliseum in New York, Long Island in a short while from now.
Absolutely. As we just mentioned, the enthusiasm, the excitement to catch up or perhaps just get a glimpse of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We have people queuing up in about 5 hours before the event. That's what we've been told. And Shubhendu, our colleague, will be joining us live to give us a live feel of all of that excitement with artists from different groups playing their traditional music for welcoming their Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi.
Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, is set to address the Modi and U.S. program. That's how it's titled. It can also be seen as Modi and Us at the same time. And that event is expected to begin approximately at 9:30 p.m. India time. And that should be from around 1.5 hours from now.
Exactly. So, well, the build-up is there. The final countdown has already kicked in, especially on our special broadcast. And DD India, Shubhendu Ghosh, has been sending us reports from US, from New York. This is the latest one on the Diaspora Connect event. Let's take a look.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting United States. Besides the strategic and diplomatic engagements at the Quad Summit and at United Nations, there is great anticipation around Prime Minister's connection with the Indian diaspora. In fact, I'm standing right now in front of this mega stadium, which is the Nassau Coliseum. This is going to be the venue for this very special diaspora program that Prime Minister would be engaging in. I have with me two members from the organizing committee of this mega program, Jagdish and Suhag. Jagdish, from you, I'd like to learn, what are the arrangements made? How are you planning to make this event a memorable one?
Well, it's going to be a memorable event. Just imagine the Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to address New York after 10 years. After Madison Square Garden, this is the first time. We have been after Narendra Modi ji to come and address us, but because of his busy schedule, he couldn't do. Thank God, finally he has agreed. And just imagine, day after tomorrow, 15,000 strong New Yorkers plus people coming from 40 states of America. 500 organizations, 500 cultural program artists coming together for this mega event at this mega stadium to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Nassau County. And this is the first time ever any Prime Minister has come to Nassau County. So I was talking to the Nassau County executive, that is Mayor of Nassau County. He said, Jagdish, I'm so excited. 2 months back, I hosted a cricket team, and now I'm hosting your Prime Minister, who is not only a popular leader of Bharat, but he's a global leader.
Right. Suhag, from you, I'd like to learn about the name of this mega program. I understand it is called Modi and US, but one can also read it as Modi and Us. Interesting play of words. How do you see it?
I think it's really up to whoever is saying it. You can say India and US and India and Us, but it really means the same thing. It's about our connection with India. And it's about the Indian American diaspora being ambassadors of a cultural ethos of unity and diversity. And it's such a nice blending of cultures, because to be Indian is to be pluralistic, to be American is to be pluralistic. And that's why the U.S.-India friendship is a natural one. And that's why Indian Americans are also a natural fit to their adopted country, the United States.
Right. I understand that almost a mini India is going to be created here in terms of the cultural performances, special presentations that are going to be here when the Prime Minister arrives at the stadium. Jagdish, take us through the special programs that you've lined up for Prime Minister when he's here.
Well, like I told you, 500 artists are going to perform here, and you will see a mini Bharat here. In Nassau County, in America, you'll see a mini Bharat from, participating, performing Indian arts to Bollywood, patriotic song, you can say on and on. I think Sohagji can take a little more about the cultural program, what we have lined up.
Absolutely. Well, what's really wonderful about this program is that not only did it garner a tremendous response, so many internationally and nationally known artists who came forward to volunteer for the program. We have classical, folk, funky, you name it. We have every genre possible. We have north, south, east, west, and everything in between in terms of India. All of those cultures represented. So the theme of unity and diversity, it is through and through. We see it from the people that are coming, the audience, the participants, to the programming, to the volunteers. We are unity and diversity.
All right. On that note, finally, the kind of role that Indian America diaspora is playing in bringing the two great democracies and societies closer. How do you reflect on that thought through this event as well?
Well, I'll tell you, America being the oldest democracy and India being the largest democracy, we are natural partners. And I believe Indian American diaspora plays very important role in this. I call it people-to-people relation. The role Indian American have played for bilateral relation is amazing. Today you see we have congressman, governor of the state, and today if you see even Kamala Harris, who is half Indian, is contesting as the president of the United States. That shows how important Indian diaspora is in USA. We are very politically savvy, and hopefully in next few years you'll see Indian American as the president of United States.
All right, on that hopeful note, thank you very much for speaking with DD India. So the stage is all set for the mega diaspora event when Prime Minister Narendra Modi reaches United States here in New York at Long Island. Nassau Coliseum is all ready to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Indian diaspora with camera person Sumit Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in New York.
So India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's landmark visit to the United States began on a significant note, with the US facilitating the return of 297, that is almost 300 precious antiquities stolen or trafficked from India. And this repatriation is a result of the strong bilateral ties and cultural cooperation between the two nations.
Absolutely, Munmun. And during their bilateral meeting earlier in Wilmington, Delaware on September 21st, Prime Minister Modi and US President Joe Biden were presented with a selection of these artifacts symbolizing a very strong collaboration between two nations. Those are the visuals of two leaders meeting, and this gesture follows the Cultural Preservation Agreement signed in July 2024 earlier, actually fulfilling those commitments made by President Joe Biden and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in order to safeguard cultural heritage, cultural legacy, which is definitely, Munmun, seen as a reflective, reflective in the joint statement issued after the two leaders met, remember, in June last year in 2023.
Yes, and some of the notable antiquities handed over include Apsara and sandstone from central India belonging to the 10th and 11th century CE. Jain Tirthankar in bronze from central India belonging to the 15th and 16th century CE.
Also, terracotta vase from eastern India going back to 3rd to 4th century CE. We also have stone sculpture from South India dating back to 1st century BCE. Well, that's long ago, yeah?
Absolutely, and not just that, Lord Ganesh in bronze from South India belonging to the 17th and 18th century, standing Lord Buddha in sandstone from North India belonging to 15th to 16th century.
Also including Lord Vishnu in bronze from Eastern India belonging to 17th to 18th century, and anthropomorphic figure in copper from North India dating back to 2000 to 1800 BCE.
Lord Krishna in bronze from South India belonging to the 17th and 18th century, and Lord Kartikeya in granite from South India belonging to the 13th and 14th century. So in all, these artifacts span across a period of 4,000 years, and the United States has returned them to India. They were trafficked and stolen earlier from India, and they went to the United States. Now the US making this gesture and returning those antiquities to India. There's also a cultural property restitution agreement between the two sides under which these artifacts have been returned.
Right. And talking more about the significance of this particular visit of Prime Minister Modi to United States, he will be addressing the Summit of the Future at the United Nations that is scheduled for September 23rd, that is tomorrow. DD India's Amritpal Singh reports from the UN headquarters. Take a look.
United Nations, the apex global body which has often been criticized for failing humanity to address its current problems. The UN is now staging a summit of the future, which has an ambitious agenda to find solutions to the emerging problems, the solutions to problems which may affect humanity in the near future, to evolve a global consensus, a pact for future which solves humanity's problems. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be addressing world leaders on Monday at the Summit of the Future, making a strong case for keeping international commitments on sustainable development, financing for the developing countries, and transforming the global governance architecture to make it more effective and equitable. But the big question is, will world leaders be able to keep their differences aside and find solutions to the problems of the world? But despite the cynicism, it is a welcome step by the UN because, as the Mahatma once said, the future depends on what you do today. With cameraman Sumit Naudyal, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India at the UN headquarters in New York.
And DD India's Amritpal Singh also caught up with this 6-year-old Ranveer Singh Sachdeva from India. And yes, you heard that right. He's just all of 6. Ranveer Singh is the youngest participant at the Summit of the Future. Take a look.
As the United Nations holds the Summit of the Future here at the UN headquarters, one of the pillars of the summit is science and technology and innovation, where the UN will try and achieve a global digital compact to use technology for humanity equitably, to have youth participate in it. I have with me one kid who's not even a youth, he's just a 6-year-old child, Ranveer Sachdeva, who's traveled all the way from Delhi here in New York to participate in the Summit of the Future. He's written a book on AI. Ranveer, thank you very much for speaking to us. First of all, tell us, why are you here?
So I'm here traveling from India to and I'm the world's youngest participant in the Summit of the Future, which is a part of the UN General Assembly. It mainly targets on how youth can impact the AI world for world peace. So I'm here to attend the Summit of the Future.
Okay. You're not even youth technically, you are just a child right now, a 6-year-old child. What grade do you study in?
I'm studying in third grade.
Okay. So how do you think as a child AI affects you or the other children of the world?
So AI affects us in many different ways.
Okay.
I've always said that our generation is born with AI because AI is all around us. ask Alexa, right from your conversation with Alexa and Siri, to YouTube and Netflix suggesting you more songs and videos you like to watch. It's all AI.
Okay. And I understand you've written a book. What's the name of the book?
Are you born with AI?
Okay. And you say you were born with AI?
Yeah. Because, it's all around us.
Okay, great. So as Ranveer Sachdeva says, AI is all around us, but more importantly, he's here as the youngest participant here in the Summit of the Future. Well, if this is the future, then it looks bright. With cameraman Sumit Naudiyal, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India at the UN headquarters in New York.
Well, the future, it seems, is indeed bright with such tiny tots and child prodigies from India. We'll see more of them in some hours from now, and almost an hour from now, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses a 20,000 or 15,000 strong crowd of Indian Americans in New York. But let's get started with some perspective on how the visit has been so far and the build-up to the major diaspora event. Joining us, our special guest, Anil Kumar Trigunayat, former Indian ambassador. He's also served as India's Trade Commissioner to New York in the past. Also, Atul Aneja is joining us here at the studio. He's an expert of foreign affairs. And Chitra Subramanian will also be joining us. She's a commentator of international politics and senior journalist. She's right there with us. Such a pleasure to have all of you here. A high-powered panel on DD India. Chitraji, I'll begin with you. Some special moments we've seen already in the bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Joe Biden. Warm gestures. Biden, for the first time, inviting foreign leaders, including PM Modi, at his residence. How has the visit been to your mind so far? And are you looking forward to the diaspora event?
Yes, good evening. This is the diaspora from Geneva. Yes, it's been warm. I mean, if you look at what's going on, it's like a warm, the relationship with the US has been good. It's been on year, it's been going solidly. And I thought that the event in President Biden's home was a nice warm farewell to him, and also to the Japanese Ms. Ishida. So yes, it's gone well. It's gone well so far. And of course, the relationship, as I said, with the US has been, I mean, there are issues here and there. But if you look at it over the last 25 years, it's been solid and growing. And of course, everyone's waiting for the big vote, in November. So. So that's basically what it is. And let's see what the Prime Minister says in a few hours from now, or in an hour from now.
But Chitra ma'am, in terms of big picture, how do you see the significance of this event in terms of multipolarity? We are talking about the bilateral aspect, and then there is a multilateral aspect, there is Quad, and now we are also talking about the Summit of the Future. There's so much in this being, the outgoing President Biden, but Prime Minister Modi's, this is in continuation to his earlier visits with different American presidents, and now this one.
Yeah, I mean, the Summit of the Future is something that's important because, as you know, that the United Nations is sort of at the bottom of its credibility. And there have been calls for rebuilding the UN. In fact, India has been calling for the expansion of the Security Council. It's pretty high up on India's agenda. So multilaterally, that's something that we will be doing. And more important than that, who are the people India is meeting on the sidelines of the UN? That is very important. These meetings, I think 150 leaders are coming, and Mr. Modi is not addressing the UNGA. But there are so many bilateral, what's called side events, or what we can call catching people on the sides of the UN. That is something that's going to be important. And we know that the Foreign Secretary already said that in the Biden meeting, they addressed Bangladesh. This is important. As I was saying, it's important. Bangladesh is in our neighborhood. So I'm really happy to hear that. And of course, we have to see what happens with Sri Lanka, which is also has gone to the polls. There's now a second round. So, it's good to see that these issues are being addressed, which is why these these big mega events are important because you have to show your presence. But it's also important that, who else do you meet? Because don't forget that these leaders have a very packed agenda. And by that I mean, even to get 15 minutes with them on a year is impossible. So imagine if you're able to meet 20 leaders in a span of 48 hours, that's itself So from that perspective, these meetings are absolutely good.
Right, Chitraji. So a lot of global and regional issues taken up, and like you said, a number of issues from Sri Lanka to Bangladesh could also have been taken up. Well, we'll take this forward with Ambassador Trigunayat. Ambassador, you've served in New York in the past. I was seeing that you were the trade commissioner there. You've seen the relationship from very close quarters. What do you make of how the visit has been so far? Because there's been an in-person Quad summit. There's so many outcome statements that have come out, and there has been a very substantive bilateral also with President Biden and with other Quad leaders as well. So how has the visit been to your mind so far?
And Sakal, in fact, United States is a very consequential relationship for us. And I would say that it is said to be the global comprehensive strategic partnership with certain riders that we always continue to have in every relationship. Here also we have. And that's why when Chitra mentioned about the discussion on Bangladesh with President Biden, that was very important. And because it did impact us in a negative manner, whatever developments have taken place there. So Prime Minister Modi has a great relationship with the world leaders, with President Biden, and because of the way that India has become a strategic pivot for the United States in the region, and on its own being the largest, fastest growing economy, the largest democracy, the most populous nation, the youth dividend for next 30 years, and therefore it has a tremendous heft. More importantly, that India has clearly shown that it is a country that works for peace through dialogue, diplomacy, and respect for UN Charter. It wants its rightful place. It is not demanding, it is commanding its rightful place in the United Nations, in the Security Council. And that's where you are going to have the summit of the future, where all these issues will be raised. As far as Quad is concerned, I think that the Quad is probably one of the few organizations which have really shown a tremendous growth story in a very short period of about 4 years. You have so many projects which are for the global welfare, so to say, and more specifically towards the Indo-Pacific. And this time, this declaration, the Quad declaration, is very clearly having an imprint of India. If you come to think of it, including a very similar nomenclature called Maitri as far as the trading and the maritime domain is concerned. A lot of the specific issues that have come out. In health security, India has done tremendously well for the vaccine Maitri, and for the world at large, which has been acknowledged. So India's G20 initiatives have also been very much acknowledged, both in the bilateral as well as in the multilateral domain. So I would say that the visit has been extremely good. It has been bilateral, plurilateral, and going to be the multilateral, apart from this diaspora diplomacy that we are going to witness in a short while.
Okay. I think let's have a quick comment from Anilji in our studio, the political commentator. I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, Atul Anejaji in our studio, political affairs, global political affairs expert. The quick comment on Quad, and before we go to Shubhendu's report, how do you see India's sway and influence at this Quad at this particular juncture? Because there are also a lot of conversations revolving around changing the discourse, where Quad is not only about containing the expansionism of China. There is much more, and India has that vision.
Sakal, I think what has happened is that Quad has got reoriented during the COVID pandemic. I think the security element of it, and in fact, if you see Prime Minister's own statement this morning when he was addressing the Quad, he himself mentioned that the Quad is not against any other country. So that's a very important nuance, which also reflects what the Prime Minister had said at the Shanghai, not the Shanghai, the Shangri-La dialogue a couple of years ago. So I think we have reoriented Quad into an organization for the global good. So the kind of agenda which Quad carries forward today is related to vaccine development, climate change issues, humanitarian and disaster relief. So I think that is the track which we have taken, or the Quad has taken. And there has been a big, as Anil was saying, there has been a major imprint of India in that discourse.
Yes.
So I think the China factor, frankly, is not the primary factor now in Quad. If you look at the China factor, there's another organization called AUKUS, which is Australia, UK and US, which is essentially
but China does
secretariat.
feel threatened. I'm sorry, I'm taking a little
No
detour. It called Quad recently Asia's NATO.
Yeah.
So that is kind of...
No, I think this is what the conversation which I've had with many Chinese.
Okay.
That you are still caught on with what used to be your impression about 10 years ago. But Quad has clearly moved in a different direction and is not hostile to China.
Under the leadership of India, particularly.
Under the leadership.
That's important.
And I think that's the most important, because
Yes,
we took the initiative of giving it a specific non-confrontational kind of orientation.
Yes, so Prime Minister Narendra Modi has set the record straight that Quad is not subjected against any country. But the excitement is building up in New York ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's diaspora event. So excitement is building up there, and Shubhendu Ghosh gets us more on that.
We are in front of Nassau Coliseum, this gigantic stadium that is playing host to the mega diaspora program to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. You can see the long queues of people, Indian Americans who've gathered here from across America. I'm told around 40 states. They've driven down 10-12 hours to be here at this program to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Hear him speak. You can see the long queues of people all waiting to enter. In a short while from now, Prime Minister would be arriving at this venue and would be addressing the gathering. It is seen as the next big event after the Madison Square event of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. If we turn to the other side, there are cultural performances that are going on continuously. There is Punjabi Bhangra, there is Gujarati Garba. There are also Telugu groups who are presenting their songs. So in that sense, a mini India created at this very special stadium in Nassau, New York City. Some 15,000 Indian Americans have come to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Let's also hear from them what they have to say about this grand event. What are your thoughts about meeting Prime Minister today?
Yeah, we are really very excited, and this will be the first time we have been meeting PM President over here, Modi ji. Yeah, this is really excited, yeah.
What would you say, ma'am?
I'm really so happy and excited to see Modi ji.
Same here. Where are you from and how long did it take for you to come?
We came from Connecticut. Took us about an hour to get here.
What are your thoughts, ma'am, about meeting Prime Minister?
Oh, we're very excited. Very honored and excited.
Yeah, it's the first time I'm going to see the Narendra Modi. I'm so excited to see him in person. So,
yes, I'm very excited to see Mr. Modi. This is first time. Second time I'm going. I was in Madison Square Garden too. So we are hard in support of him. I'm from New Jersey, and my family is also with me here.
Lovely.
And he's our pride. And I also attended his Madison Square Garden events, and so I'm very excited with the children.
I am Indian. It gives me pride. He is my Prime Minister. I am from Delhi, originally Delhi and finally Delhi, and he is in Delhi.
Bharat Mata ki Jai! Modi hai to mumkin hai!
Those are excited Indian Americans. Some 15,000 of them are all coming here to participate in this mega program. All excited. The excitement is palpable. In a short while from now, they will be in company of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Indian American community has created a special name for itself in America. Their contribution to the economy, their celebration of their culture, all lends them a distinct identity in America. Prime Minister also speaks about the manner in which these Indian Americans are the true ambassador of Indian culture and values. In a short while from now, some 500 artists have been performing at this event outside, and they're also planning to perform inside once Prime Minister reaches. What Prime Minister has to say would be something that these thousands of Indian Americans are waiting to hear. With camera person Sanjay Jaina, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in New York.
And Shubhendu Ghosh, our correspondent, is now joining us from Ground Zero from New York, where all the excitement is, and the build-up has just begun. This is going to reach a crescendo very soon. Shubhendu, remember 2014 Madison Square Garden? That's where Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a sense, launched that Diaspora Connect that has become so symbolic of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's foreign policy and diplomacy. Just what do the Indian Americans think about him as a leader, Prime Minister Narendra Modi as a leader? Do they feel that sense of patriotism when you spoke to them?
A few facts that I want to share with you today. There are 13,000. Absolutely. Hello, Munmun and Sakal. It is remarkable. The reference to Madison Square is coming up so often. It was 10 years ago. And the excitement and this need to connect with the Prime Minister, be in his company, being very proud of his achievements and where India stands today. That connection continues to thrive. 10 years down the line, nothing has changed. In fact, the energy, the anticipation has only grown from strength to strength. Speaks volumes about many things. One, of course, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership and the manner in which he has been able to steer India through very challenging geopolitics, which sort of brings attention to the kind of power that India represents today. It also puts attention on the Indian Americans, the diaspora, the manner in which not only have they thrived in a foreign land, created a name for themselves, but the kind of connect that they feel towards their motherland, to the idea of Indianness. Prime Minister Diamond again says that these Indian Americans, Indian students, whatever work that you do on a foreign land, you act as an ambassador of all that is Indian, whether it's value, culture, tradition, or the idea of democracy for that matter. Right. So there's so many values which are common between India and America, and Indian American diaspora in the most dynamic fashion represent the best of both the worlds.
You know, as you speak, Shubhendu, we're also going to just do a quick recap of those mega events, the diaspora events, which were hosted by the diaspora community in United States of America during the previous visits of Prime Minister Modi. Meanwhile, well, if you look at the numbers, I mean, they look fabulous. There are about at least 4.4 million Indian Americans or Indian origin people reside in US. I'm sure you know that. And persons of Indian origin, 3.18 million at least. They constitute the third largest Asian ethnic group in US. So not only being the movers and the shakers when it comes to the professional circuits there, but otherwise also, this is an election season. We are not going to talk about politics, but Indian diaspora really matters when it comes to their politics and other scheme of things, that's important. So just give us a feel, besides the Indian Diaspora Connect and the way they're looking forward to this event, which I'm sure will move from strength to strength, as you rightly put it, what about the other part? How do they look at this particular visit of Prime Minister Modi to US?
Absolutely. It's a hugely significant visit, Sakal. I mean, if we broadly take a macro view on Prime Minister's visit, there are various bilateral, plurilateral and multilateral engagements. Day one, we saw the very significant Quad summit and the kind of outcomes that came out. It really writes a new chapter of cooperation and development partnership between the Quad countries, not just for themselves, but for the entire region of the Indo-Pacific. Today, of course, we are at this mega diaspora event. In a short while from now, Prime Minister would be here engaging with thousands of Indian Americans who've come from all parts of America to listen to him, to meet him. Later today, Prime Minister engages with the corporate leaders. There is a CEO roundtable, how to bring in the best of the private sector of India and America, make them work together, encourage investment from one another in each other's country. That is going to be the focus, particularly in the domain of critical technologies. Neither India nor America want to be left behind, because these technologies are going to, in many ways, define the future ahead, and also sustainable development vision that these countries envision also would depend on harnessing these technologies in a sustainable manner. Thereafter, day 3 is going to be focusing on Prime Minister's speech at the United Nations. That would be Summit of the Future. very, very significant for all the crises that the international community faces today, whether it's about sustainable development goals not being met, the country is not going on the right track as far as achieving the targets of 2030 are concerned, whether we see the deadly impact of climate change all around us, wherever in the world we may be, or the conflicts like the Ukraine and the Gaza conflict showing no signs of ceasefire or a peaceful resolution. These are really difficult, bad signs for the global community and its future. It is time, therefore, for the international community to do some sort of a course correction, reflect on it, see the adverse impact that all these developments have on the global south. So in that sense, Prime Minister's speech assumes even greater significance at the United Nations. So broadly, engagements of Prime Minister in this visit of the U.S. Sakal?
Yeah, India's role as a peacemaker. We're going to talk about that as well. But quickly, once more, run us through, Munmun, we would like to know from Shubhendu, what would make this diaspora event a little different? I'm sure it's going to be cut above the rest because the kind of reports that you've been sending us, give us a sense what all is expected.
Yes. This diaspora event is going to be very, very special. This is what the organizers say. And in fact, one of the remarkable things that we spoke about earlier was that it's been 10 years since the very first mega diaspora event India and the world saw what a diaspora event could look like. And we saw that in Madison Square. So many years down the line, this craze, this need to connect with the Prime Minister, this passion in the Indian Americans, Indians living abroad, has not changed at all. And I think that passion, that energy, the credit to it goes to the emotional bond that Prime Minister has been able to forge with the Indian diaspora. So time really is not a factor in that case. Wherever Prime Minister goes, not just about America, earlier he was in Singapore, in other countries as well, everywhere we see a similar kind of energy. As far as this event is concerned, the application for Indian diaspora members to participate in it was over 20,000 applications that come in. But unfortunately, the stadium had a capacity of only 15,000, not enough, therefore, to accommodate all the Indian Americans who wanted to come here. So it's going to be a packed stadium inside. There are some 500 artists who've gathered here. They're performing outside. When the queues were long, they were performing outside. Now there are performances that are lined up inside, which will go on till Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives at the stage. Different languages, different cultures, a mini India is created. In that sense, the manner in which India is coming of age on the global stage, we see the remarkable celebration of Indianness here at the heart of United States. And the American people, they've also been very curious, and they quite admire the manner in which Prime Minister is able to connect with the Indian diaspora. They've not seen anything like this anywhere in the world. So in that sense, a very, very special moment for everyone, for the diaspora, for, of course, Prime Minister, and also Americans here who are looking at this event with great enthusiasm and curiosity.
Shubhendu, just stay with us. We have our guests also joining us live from Geneva. But just at one point before I give it to you, I don't remember any other world leader, Shubhendu, to you as well, who seems to have drawn such a steady flow of attention on a foreign soil.
No, absolutely. The kind of love and adulation that is showered on him by the Indian community, and the way other world leaders wonder. I remember Anthony Albanese sometime back had said, you got such a rock star welcome there in Australia. Yes, absolutely.
And the boss comment.
Yes.
Let's go back to Shubhendu.
Yes, Shubhendu, you were talking about the Americans also towards the end of your answer. Just wanted to know whether you got the opportunity to speak to any average American. How is he perceiving the rock star welcome that Prime Minister gets every time? His event becomes a rock star concert in itself. So how does the average American view the rise of Indian Americans and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership, if you could fill us in on that?
Right, Munmun, interestingly, more importantly, average American knows about India in more details and in a more engaging fashion. They recognize who Prime Minister Narendra Modi is, even if they're not as interested or as engaged in international politics. The name seems to ring a bell for each one of them. In fact, a few days ago, I was engaging with some students of New York University, both Indian and American, and they said that there's so much excitement even in the campus that an Indian Prime Minister is coming. There is such a mega event that is being organized. It's America is one of the leading parts. Leaders from all across the world keep coming. But the kind of anticipation that is created when Prime Minister Narendra Modi's tour is planned is something they haven't seen. But they go a little deeper into the issue as well, because they talk about the issues that Prime Minister raises on global stage. They were referring to the United Nations Summit of the Future. And they also recognize the very significant leadership role that India is trying to play as far as the concerns of the global south is concerned. In a very nuanced way, Prime Minister has been able to underline that the adverse impacts of not meeting sustainable development goals, climate change crisis, impacts the nations of the global south. So when we talk about climate justice, India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi present a very strong voice, a voice which is clear, a voice which is very assertive, and a voice which is that of reason and which wishes for a better future, a sustainable future for everyone. But it does not shy away from calling spade a spade. So in that sense, all those elements, especially the youngsters, young American, they find it quite interesting that here's a leader who speaks his mind, at the same time speaks for the good of all.
Yes, Shubhendu, stay with us. We'll keep coming back to you because after all the action is where you are.
Yes.
But let's bring in the other guests as well. They've been waiting for quite some time. Chitra ji, appreciate your patience. You've joined us from Geneva. Chitra ji, Shubhendu was talking about how Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership is perceived by an average American. You've studied in America too. And do you notice the kind of rise of the Indian American community that we've seen? Its clout has only increased with time. They are there in the White House establishment. They are there in the U.S. Congress. They are there as professionals. They are there as educators. Highly respected all in all. What's your sense of the way in which the clout of the Indian Americans have increased? And many of them, by the way, would be voting in the U.S. presidential elections as well.
Yeah, this is India's time now, historically and politically. So yes, I studied there. That was 40 years ago. But now things are very different. And and this visit. I mean, I do want to make one point about the Quad. I was looking at the readouts. Now, the Quad thing. It's important what the Prime Minister said, that the Quad is not against anyone, and these are democracies. But the most important thing is that Quad will be looking at everything. I mean, people are talking about China. Okay, now India is the only member of the Quad. We have boots on the ground with China. So it's important for the world to understand that we are the only country in the Quad. We are facing Chinese on our border. So this has to be stressed that it's not easy for India. Yes, we can talk about the Pacific and the oceans and all that, but we are actually facing Chinese, we are eyeball to eyeball. But having said that, an important thing was also the moonshot. The moonshot event where the Prime Minister pledged money for vaccines, cancer vaccines and cervical cancer, which is on the rise in India. It's important that, important leaders make this kind of a pledge. It's important that when they're on the world stage, they talk about public health, they talk about climate change. These are important events to note. And I also wanted to make the point on a very personal note. You mentioned my stay in the U.S. Yes, if Kamala Harris becomes the president, if she becomes the president, then she would be an Indian of. I need to phrase this correctly. I mean, no person of Indian origin would have had
Indian heritage, partly Indian heritage.
Yeah, I said partly Indian heritage. Thanks for correcting me. Would have held such an important position. You can look at all the leaders we've had through history, and nobody would have held such an important position, and that's something that we must salute.
Okay. Oh, yes, let me just take that point quickly. Shubhendu, please stay with us. We're going to come to you also. Let's quickly go back to Ambassador Anil also to have his views on this continuity of this partnership, India-US. Ambassador Tigniot, whosoever comes next, whether it's Donald Trump's administration or Kamala Harris's administration.
We might be very happy that there is some partly Indian person becomes the president of the United States. They are Americans first. Let's not forget it. They might be the bridges, but having dealt with the community, I can tell you they connect with us much better now. They feel very proud of India, India's development. But at the core of it, and I keep interacting with a lot of my friends in the U.S. who are American citizens, and they are very much invested like any other American in the United States politics. Republicans are Republicans, those who are supporting Democrats are Democrats, and that don't change. And so for them, the first priority is their country. And exactly this is what we would expect from Kamala Harris if she is elected. For optics, it looks very good for us. But if you think that they're going to go extra mile to do something, I think we need to be cautious in that judgment. On the other hand, I must say that the Indians are doing extremely well. Business leaders, 25 multinational corporations are actually headed by the Indians, the top ones from there. That's a very good statement to make. That shows that the Indians who have gone there, that country, have done very well and have reached the top, breaking the glass ceiling. That's an important thing. They are the professionals. The doctors from India are the best there, or who are the highest per capita earners in the United States. So they are the people who are calling the shots. They're politically savvy, they're economically successful, they are culturally standing apart and trying to impart that for their own children as well as for the others. So that's how they become the living bridge. They are part of the network for investments, technology transfer. Myself, when I was there in the 90s, I remember that it is because of the diaspora, basically, that we were able to get all major financial companies from the United States to look at India. Much greater investment. The big companies that came into India, IT revolution that you got was essentially owed a great deal to the Indian community which has been living there. But they were not that connected as they are during this current Prime Minister Modi's, I think, the star appeal that he has, the way he connects, the way he talks to them, I think that says a lot. And the United States is a very major partner for us in every which way we look at it, and will continue to be, because for the same one reason that we must understand that going forward, the future will be technology driven. And today, the US is the ace technology provider. And therefore, all the interactions that we have with them for transfer of technology, for joint ventures, for others are extremely important. And those are the ones that India is pursuing. And we have several Indian companies. In the the conductors, we have seen the Indian company Macron, which has already started doing the CEO is an Indian. So I think that there is a thing, and consistently the Prime Minister, every time he has gone, he has met with these leaders, tried to attract them into India.
And he'll be doing that again when he holds that technology roundtable with technology CEOs. And it's interesting that you mentioned that there are so many of those heads of US technology companies who are Indian, be it Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella of Google and Microsoft respectively. Atulji, you've been waiting for quite some time. What do you make of the clout of the Indian American community over the years? Like I said, in the White House, heading technology companies in almost every sector of life there.
Munmun, the Indian diaspora is really a soft power machine. It gives India so much more clout. They have done well, as you have mentioned and as other guests have mentioned. They are influential players in the American system. And
even
now,
within the US Congress.
Absolutely. And now you look at it in a very pragmatic way. If I'm an American today, I'm going to look at this event and say, look, these are my voters. I would like to get them on my side. And who's the influencer in chief here? It's the Prime Minister of India, because they have come to see him. So can you imagine the importance of Prime Minister of India to the domestic politics of America? This is huge. The diaspora's rise is connected to India's clout, and we can leverage that for the rise of India, because ultimately we need, what is all this for? It is essentially for Viksit Bharat. Ultimate aim is 2047, and America will be a partner in that particular exercise. The technology, the manpower, skills, etc., the defense relationship which is going to come, it's all going to dovetail into one grand objective. And that is what the Prime Minister's whole mission is, in fact, of this visit is. And all that we see about the diaspora right now is essentially to dovetail and channel that in that direction.
So, the timings of it, and look at what is happening around the world. Even Russian President Vladimir Putin, sometime I was just reading, he said that he's okay to have India as well as China or Brazil as a mediator. But here we'll only talk about India as a peacemaker, the timings of the visit, coming close on the heels of his visit to Russia, then Ukraine, and this whole narrative that yes, India can be the peacemaker, looking at what's happening in the globe, across the globe, not only the Ukraine, Russia, but the rest.
Sakal, you have to go back.
So the world is watching this, by the way. The world is watching this visit.
And India's interest or deep national interest in peace was very visible from the time of the G20 summit, when we decided that we will engage with the multipolar world and we will also be the tangent or the channel to the global south. Right? So you announced that you're going to play a global role. Now, if you're going to play a global role, and which would mean food security, energy security, which would demand stability, otherwise you can't play that role. And if you want to have stability, you don't have to have conflict. So there is a vested interest, given India's own vision in terms of playing a global role, it is to see that conflicts are diffused, and and you see the Prime Minister moving in that direction. Visit to Russia, then Zelensky in Ukraine, before that G7. Now the Quad meeting,
then Brunei also. I mean,
it's right there, and now probably the BRICS, which will come up in Kazan in October. And so we are not taking sides here. We are seeing India's strategic autonomy, India's own national interests demand global peace, and we are not shying away from engaging with everybody. So we are not playing to any galleries here. The only thing which we are fixated is India's national interest and India's own vision of becoming a developed country by 2047.
Not taking any sides, but taking
India's side. And I think the world respects that.
Yes,
the world respects that.
Absolutely. We're going to take a very short break here. I'm going to request Chitra ma'am joining us all the way from Geneva. Ma'am, if you could hear me, we're taking a very short break. Also, Ambassador Trignath, really appreciate your patience, sir. And Atulji in our studio. Me and Munmun, we take a short break. Our special broadcast, Prime Minister Modi's Diaspora Connect, continues, and we will continue to keep track of what's happening in New York. Lots is happening there. Stay with us.
Don't go anywhere.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाएगी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाई थी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन हैं। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
जिंदगी की हर छोटी बड़ी जरूरत के लिए आप जो सपने सजाते हैं, बस उसी उम्मीद को तो हम सहारा लगाते हैं। SIP आपकी सेविंग्स को आपकी खातिर काम पर लगाई थी। आज ही अपनी पहली SIP की शुरुआत करें। अधिक जानकारी के लिए अपने वित्तीय सलाहकार से परामर्श करें। LIC म्यूचुअल फंड द्वारा निवेशक शिक्षा की एक पहल।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार के जोखिम के अधीन हैं। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
Welcome back. You're watching a special broadcast, PM Modi's Diaspora Connect. We are counting down to that centerpiece event in New York where Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be addressing at least 15,000 Indian Americans who've gathered there to listen to the Prime Minister. And after that, a lot of engagements will happen, will roll out. We'll play them all out for you. Our guests continue to be with us. From Geneva, we have Chitra Subramaniam ji, a very well-known and reputed Indian journalist. Besides that, we have Atul Aneja, foreign affairs expert here in the studio, and former Indian ambassador Anil Kumar Trigunayat ji is also with us. But before that, we'll take a look at something else which is expected to play out tomorrow, which is a Monday, and that is the Summit of the Future. So DD India's correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh visited the New York University campus to find out what young people expect from the Summit of the Future and what they feel about emerging technologies. Take a listen.
Summit of the Future is taking place at the United Nations in New York. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be addressing this summit. I have with me what looks like a bright future. Well, I'm talking about young students, Indian and American, at the prestigious New York University. And this red building that you see behind us, this imposing structure, is the Bob's Library, an iconic structure that is center of the academic and intellectual life of the students here. I have with me Alvina and her friends who are here to talk with us. Alvina, first, not very far from here at the United Nations headquarters, Summit of the Future is going to be deliberating on sustainable tomorrow. What are your thoughts on what this summit is going to be deliberating on, and what kind of action-oriented agenda would you like to see?
I would say, obviously, we, the millennials or the Gen Z, are really looking forward to leave a better planet for our next generations. And what we would hope is, obviously, all the global leaders and all the stakeholders to take some actionable insights to make sure that we are moving towards a more sustainable future for us.
In response to your question, I think the summit does bring a lot of hope for the future. In the past, a lot of summits that have occurred, I feel like, have not really achieved the goals that they have set. I'm hoping that this one will be more action-driven and really will solve all the problems that they have identified in previous summits.
Hi, I think the summit is mainly focusing on tackling the environmental issues, which is actually the need of the hour, because India has been progressing in every other domain, especially under the current government.
All right. Another aspect of the Summit of the Future is the manner in which new emerging technologies are going to be looked at, are going to be adapted by different nations. AI is something that has been making a lot of buzz around the world.
As you talked about AI, so AI is one of the fastest growing technologies right now. And with the growth of AI, the growth of semiconductor industries has been massive. And with the recent success of the Semicon meeting in India, where everyone around the world came to India to promote the semiconductor industry and lead to the growth of AI, I'm pretty hopeful about it.
As an AI architect myself, I've seen that AI plays a really big role in a lot of industries, healthcare, any type of engineering, healthcare, AI plays a big role. So as the name suggests, Summit of the Future, and it gives us a glimpse of the future.
I strongly feel that technological advancement is a
is a value that is shared by both India and the United States. And Prime Minister in his speeches also mentions about sustainable development, technological advancement, and talks about Viksit Bharat.
All right, these were young, bright students, Indian and American, at the New York University, talking about the Summit of the Future and the potential of India-United States ties. With camera person Sumit Nodiyal, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in New York.
So that Summit of the Future is key event for tomorrow, but let's quickly focus on the bilateral economic partnership as well, which has certainly taken a big center stage. It's a focal point as Prime Minister Modi is already in U.S. DD India's Shubhendu Ghosh gets us more on this from New York. Let's take a listen.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a 3-day visit to the United States. PM's visit is expected to give new momentum to India-U.S. economic ties, particularly in the domain of critical and emerging technologies. On Sunday, Prime Minister will interact with top American CEOs in New York.
Trade relationship between India are geopolitically aligned. Tactically, they're important. But more important, you have to understand, as the stress point goes up between U.S. and China, the de-risking of supply chain becomes critical for U.S. companies. And that's where India becomes very, very critical in trying to bring in much more stable supply chain from India into the U.S.
U.S. is the largest trading partner of India, with overall bilateral trade of over $190 billion in 2023. During financial year 23-24, U.S. was the third largest source of FDI into India, with inflows of $4.99 billion, accounting for almost 9% of total FDI equity inflows. Many Indian companies are investing in the U.S. According to a recent study, 163 Indian companies invested over $40 billion in the U.S. and created over 400,000 direct jobs. Beyond economics, US-India partnership is strengthened by deep people-to-people connections. The Indian diaspora in the United States plays a crucial role in fostering cultural and business exchanges. The economic relationship between India and the United States has entered a new era of strategic importance, with deepening cooperation in critical sectors such as technology and defense. Prime Minister Modi's US visit is expected to bring greater synergy between the two dynamic economies. Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in New York.
Let's continue to have more conversation with our special guest on the show. Ambassador Trignath is going to be joining us in a bit, but we have Atula Neja ji in our Delhi studio. So before we went to Shubhendu's report, we were talking about Quad also, because that's one of the most substantive portions of this particular visit. Now, the current US and India in this whole, the fit that you see, do you think this is the new, India providing the new vision for the time to come as far as the whole Quad setting is concerned? Not only the China angle, but we've spoken about India leading the global south, and here in the Quad settings with whatever is happening across the globe. How do you see the fit?
No, I think, Sakal, I'm with you on India making a deeper impression on the Quad and giving it a more specific direction. Now, if you see...
Since we are hosting it now...
We will be hosting it in 2025.
Yes, yes.
The Prime Minister has already announced it yesterday. Now, if we are going to benefit the Indo-Pacific region, now you got to go to specific zones within the Indo-Pacific, right? Now you got to look at some of the island territories of the Pacific. You know, you got to look at Fiji, you got to look at Papua New Guinea. You know, these are very, very important places. Now, they are also, some of them have big Indian diaspora populations as well. So some of the vision of the Quad when it comes to providing public goods, in terms whether it is resistant infrastructure, or it is for climate change mitigation, or it is vaccines, or it is just humanitarian and disaster prevention or support in terms of a humanitarian crisis. Now, these are the kind of areas where the Quad will apply itself. I think India has a big window here to play, After all, if you recall, and all of us know, when Turkey happened, when earthquake happened over there, we were the first responders. Now, when you come to this geography of the Indo-Pacific, I think we are very well positioned to play that role. And then again, we pride ourselves as the pharmacy of the world. When it comes to vaccines or medicines, we can again be the front runners in this direction. So it's and again, if you look at it, I'm not ruling out the security angle completely. I'm just saying that it's not China centric, but there is any obstruction to free flow of trade routes which are going through this region. I think we have a stake here to make sure that the supply lines of trade are not interrupted. So that will also be a factor in Quad, independent China or no China. So you got to play a 360-degree role. I think the time has come to really take that leadership.
So that's India's Quad discourse led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
And I think that is going to get amplified further, Sakal, in the 2025 summit which we will be hosting.
Right.
I think these are the areas we will be deliberating and amplifying further and making it sharper and more specific in terms of who could be the possible beneficiaries, if not partners.
Right. So there is people-centric development from India's perspective particularly. And Quad also seems to have embraced India's ideas, because I remember the Foreign Secretary saying that when the acronym for Quad was given by the Prime Minister, that it's quick assisted delivery, then the Foreign Secretary said that all the other leaders said that now we understand what Quad is. So in a lighter vein though, but it seems that India is thinking out of the box and giving new ideas to shape the future of Quad. And like Sakal said, 2025 India hosts the summit, so a bigger stamp of India would be seen probably next year.
Absolutely.
But we'll take this forward with Chitra Subramaniam ji. Chitra ji, earlier in your intervention you had mentioned the Cancer Moonshot program. We know this, for starters, is for cervical cancer, and there are women all around the world that are affected by it, and this particular program will be focusing on the Indo-Pacific countries particularly. Isn't it heartening to see that there is now increasingly humanitarian element to the Quad partnership, which until now was by many seen as dominated by geopolitical discourse?
Absolutely. The gentleman who just spoke, he said that COVID changed the language of the Quad, and I think it's important to keep focus on that, because what do countries look at? They look at where can they make where can they make an impact? And I think India very well took that challenge for COVID. We can argue about what happened and didn't happen, but the fact of the moonshot, using such a big international forum to say we are going to provide assistance to cancer is important. More importantly, I think that, I said earlier in my remarks that this is India's time. I mean, come hell or high water, we are looking at a time in history and politics where India, whether you have to do business with India, I don't want to use words that we have arrived on the world stage, because those are speech writers' issues, but India is now on the world stage a major player. And I would just invite people to look at the countries or the kind of work that the Foreign Secretary has been doing. He's constantly, if you just follow his itinerary, that will tell you the amount of work that has gone into making sure that India is heard and respected and received in all capitals of the world. As we don't really have any enemies, and we're not looking for enemies. So India is also the world's biggest market, where all these companies want to come. Soon the Prime Minister will be meeting all the CEOs. What do they want? They want the world's biggest market. And our biggest factor is that we are a democracy. Let us not underestimate that we are a stable democracy in the region, which is a very difficult region in the world. But we continue to remain a very stable democracy. So let us also look at where we are strong. Why the world should come to us? And if you're looking at Europe, Europe is now on some kind of a downhill. They also need India. If you look at the big countries, and we've been calling for Security Council reform, look at the P5. The democracies in the P5 are not healthy. And India is not in the P5, but India is, you can argue, but it's a democracy on the march.
Okay.
Let us not underestimate India as a democracy. So that's the point I wanted to make.
A quick one, ma'am, since you're talking about India at the global stage. So this whole narrative in India can or perhaps is already assumed the role of a peace mediator. and this whole diplomacy and dialogue narrative, which has, by the way, gained a lot of international traction with Prime Minister Modi's subsequent visits to conflict-ridden and non-conflict-ridden zones as well. So you keenly watching, how it's shaping up, sitting in Geneva. How do you see overall, like this particular visit of Prime Minister Modi to US is keenly watched, because it is not only about ties between India and United States, there is much more to it. We are talking about other 3 countries as well and their relationships with the rest. Some of them are already battling their own demons and conflicts. India is the solution.
Well, as you said, India is the solution. We are happy to, share our good offices. We're happy to talk. And Prime Minister Modi went to Russia and to Ukraine. And in diplomacy, I mean, there are those pictures, those photographs, and I thought I heard a journalist say that why does he hug people? But that is how we greet in India. I mean, in Europe, for example, they kiss each other 3 times or 2 times, depending on the country. So let's leave that aside. It's diplomacy. So much of diplomacy is for goodwill to be seen, good to be seen and to be received. And any diplomat will tell you that, whatever happens behind the scenes. So I genuinely think that this is India's time. How we cash in, what we do, will depend on the dexterity of our diplomats, and I think they're amongst the world's best. Now, next year we are going to be, we are holding a whole lot of meetings we are holding. So yes, I'm extremely hopeful that something will come out. I'm not sure that there will be a solution, because these kinds of wars, there's no solution like that, but at least we are making small steps. We're not at war with anyone. We are looking to we are offering a platform, a conversation. It's important to talk. In these conversations, in these areas of times of distress, which the world is going through a time of great distress, it's important to talk. If you don't talk, then it's just going to get worse. So we are those talking partners. Talk to us. We'll help you talk.
Ma'am, very quickly, since we are flashing those visuals of earlier events, diaspora events, over the decade we have seen how Prime Minister Modi has developed this very strong sort of personal rapport with 3 previous US presidents. And just quoting President Biden, he recently called this relationship with Prime Minister Modi as one of the most consequential in the world. So what more is this visit going to add to that already existing relationship? And by the way, how do you also see this in terms of continuity, whosoever takes it over next year?
It's a continuous, diplomacy is a continuum. There are highs and lows, but diplomacy is a continuum of what has happened. So whoever comes as the next president, we have to be sure that our diplomacy will be strong. It's been growing stronger and stronger. America is a strong partner in terms of trade, in terms of, it's one of our strongest partners in the world. So I see this as growing. I see this as growing and becoming stronger. And perhaps India also will be in a position of no longer being just a demandeur, but also where somebody will be able to give and bring something.
Right, Chitraji, we'll come back to you, but Atulji, for now, coming to you, there were other bilaterals as well with the Japanese Prime Minister and the Prime Minister of Australia as well. Do you think that there is simply no doubt when it comes to the heft of Indian diplomacy, and going forward, would you want that reflected in the governance structures of the UNSC as well? Because Prime Minister will be speaking at the Summit of the Future, and reform of multilateral institutions is one of the 5 pillars on which he is expected to speak. So do you think that this platform will also serve as another occasion for more advocacy on this subject, and maybe other leaders could also pitch in? We've seen Barack Obama do that in the Indian Parliament.
Munmun, it's high time that India is a member of an expanded Security Council. And I think that pitch has to go in. We deserve it. And riding on our success in hosting the G20 summit in New Delhi, I think our credentials have even gone higher in terms of economy, in terms of the population size. I mean, we have all the criteria which which would go into permanent membership of the UN Security Council. So I think that we have to go ahead, and it is with a very positive intent that we need to be in the Security Council, because as your earlier reporter started, Amritpal, I think, when he talked about the the drop in influence of the UN and UN Security Council. You have conflicts going all around, and it's not been able to make any kind of a serious dent
resolve them in time.
On conflict resolution of an international level. So you need new fresh blood, you need new energy, new ideas. And I think it's also time that, we have the Eastern wisdom coming over here. And I do want to make this point that, India's own identity as a civilizational state has its own bandwidth and generates a new set of ideas when it comes to conflict resolution. I think those have to be brought onto the international agenda. We've had from the Eastern kind of outlook, we had the Yoga Day coming in, but there's so many other days, other ways in terms of a negotiating strategy. I was at a World Buddhist Conference recently, and one of the main topics was how do you apply principles of Buddhism for resolving something like Ukraine?
Like the middle path.
Like the middle path, negotiations, you don't get into a confrontational mode straight away. I mean, how do you do that?
Where the dialogue,
there is something in the Eastern wisdom which gives you ideas that I think the world has been too Western oriented, and that kind of balance of power, use of force has become just too predominant in the global system. We need to change the culture of conflict resolution. I think we have something to say on that.
I want to take this thought to Chitra ma'am. So having said that, talking about India's permanent membership in the UNSC, and we have been having this discussion, I don't know since how many years, at least a decade, this has gained more traction, at least we are talking under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. So currently speaking, ma'am, this current India-US combined, irrespective of the administration, now they're looking at elections, and the latest Quad, do you think both are fit enough to move things now? Because we cannot deny that India's voice, you yourself said, that matters a lot at the world stages. Now is the time to get that membership.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, no one's going to give it to you, okay? These things are not given to you on a platter. You actually have to go for it and make the case, as the gentleman said. It's high time. It's high time. If you look at the UNP5, I mean, they came together when the war came to an end. Each of them had an interest. And, that logic and that narrative is long finished. You are looking at a world today that, just imagine Germany, Brazil, South Africa, the heavy hitters, India are not on it. What sense does it make to have a Security Council where you have such large countries who are either economically strong or democratically strong, or, they're not there on the Security Council? It doesn't make any sense. And perhaps it serves to explain why the UN is not able to resolve any conflict. So absolutely, we need a new language, we need new ideas. We also need people who are not at war with each other. These countries are at war with each other. I mean, they came in on a war logic. Today we don't need that anymore. This kind of war logic has to go, and we do need a new conversation. We need a new, it's like in the Committee of Nations. Let me use an example from a family. Okay, you have family, and then in the family you have like the patriarch. Okay, the patriarch rules for let's say a generation or two. Then there are all these family conflicts. Then you realize that, okay, one generation is not happy, they want to make a point to the grandfather, but the grandfather won't listen. And then, an entire life, 20 years go by. But we've got to, and if you look at the Committee of Nations, that's what's happening. 30, 40, 50 years have gone by. And then you look back and say, good heavens, why did we never speak? So next week, on Monday starts the thing, and Lithuania is the chair, and I think these small and medium democracies, I think they have to make a difference, because the small and medium democracies, let me tell you, have also had it, because they've also been looked down upon by the patriarchs of the countries that call themselves the keepers of democracy. These small people in Europe, the smaller countries, they really had it. I've been in touch with them. I've been going to some conferences. You hear the same thing, that we have been talked down upon for so long. So we need our voice, and they all look at India as leading this. And I think India should just grab the initiative and go for it.
Atul Aneja ji, we'll take this forward with you. there was an interesting example that Chitra ji gave. We've seen that except China in the P5, all other countries have said that they would like India to be a permanent member in the UNSC. But hand on heart, is there resistance from within the P5, particularly from one country to India's inclusion? Because who wants to have another member in a very, very powerful club that decides everything, that has the veto power? So is that really at the crux of the problem, and how do you get pressure to bear on them to an extent that they actually agree to have negotiations on paper and agree to really move forward? Because they've been here since 1945, since the establishment of the UNSC.
You see, Munmun, I completely agree with what Chitraji was saying, that nobody is going to give you a UN Security Council membership on a platter. You will have to gate crash into it.
Are we not doing that?
Not enough,
okay.
I think. I think we need. Okay. I think we need to go far more aggressively and imaginatively. Now you come to a particular country. Let's you know, hit the bullet on the head, which is China, right? Now, how do we persuade China to be on board? To you know, accept India's membership in the Security Council. In the long run, I do feel that there is a need for a conversation with China from a position of strength, though, because I've been in China, I've stayed there for 5 years. I mean, these guys are not going to budge unless they see that it's in their interest to do so. I mean, they had a problem, let's say, with Russia on the border. For many years, nothing moved on the border, till the time they realized that if Putin and Bush, that is Bush Senior, Bush Junior, if they get together, then China will be in trouble. And you cut out a deal with a border deal with the Russians.
And interestingly, Putin has taken India, China, Brazil name in one go as mediators.
Right. So that's where you have to play hardball with the Chinese.
But
you got to engage with them.
We did play hardball with China in the Doklam standoff.
Yeah.
You would remember they were forced to retreat just ahead of a huge multilateral summit in China. So do you think we could build upon these bargaining chips and negotiating tactics over time?
I think so. You also have to realize that the Chinese, right now, the economy is not doing that great right now. And you know, there is something over there where provides an opening. It is, you know, they have been hemmed in from the United States, like in the Cold War years. So there is an element of vulnerability which is coming into China, and I think we should be mindful of that.
And can India
exploit
now
that, to put it very bluntly. That's a time to engage and to get it. But we got to get them off. This border issues coming in the way.
Okay, let's go back to no, but then Quad, and when talking about Quad and not really touching upon, Chitra ma'am, coming to you, the countering China's so-called expansionism. I mean, you cannot have this complete conversation. But let's go live to New York. So these are live visuals from the